Yeah, do that. What's up, Put? Yeah, start that. Cypress. Um, we're going to hear first from a writer named Cypress Manning. I'm going to share their bio, and then also they are going to tell you their answer to a silly question, because I don't know their answer yet. This is Cypress. Cypress Manning is a queer trans writer, artist, and educator from Taos, New Mexico. They received their BFA in poetry from Sarah Lawrence College in 2019, and they were a Hugo House Fellow in 22-23. They are in a two-person cribbage league with their mom, and they live in Seattle. Cypress, we're excited to hear your work, and we're excited to hear your answer to the question, you are suddenly a crow. What are the first three things that you collect for your sparkly hoard? Please welcome Cypress.
I feel like if I was a crow, I would collect the things that crows collect, like rocks and shells, and maybe peanuts. The family is not the only monstrous thing that happens to you. Judith Herman. Or, he said, write about joy. If it has separated you from poetry, use it to come back. When I came out of my mother, I might need help with this. Yeah. Sorry, guys. When I came out of my mother, I was all folded skin and blood. I was quiet for a while, and then later, quiet again. Slowly piecing together all the things that had been done to her, which then, in a much smaller way, were done to me. My dad's yelling, the glass broken in a perfect circle where what had been in his hand sailed through it. Mom tells me a story over the phone of running into one of my old friends. I don't tell her about what he did and how we no longer speak. She's still caught in the loop of excusing violences. Easier sometimes than acknowledging how many of our experiences weren't okay or shouldn't have happened. I used to think therapy would be a place to let it out and be met with a grounded reaction, but sometimes the truth is too hard to hold. So I keep stopping my stories midway, like in writing when we can never get to the center of the matter. Count the number of times I've asked in a poem, what is the story I'm trying to tell? Unconvinced of its poetryness anyway, all the yellow, the worn out tongues. Maybe I don't want to write anymore. I want to play mediocre guitar and sing songs written by other people. Singing can reset a nervous system. Smashing a fist into my chest or submerging my body in ice water will do the same, but maybe moving towards joy is about choosing the more pleasant option. I do remember these great big moments of peace. My mother reading to me in bed or sitting in the garden, the sun falling through the cottonwood, those connections that get lost when family leaves a place. What happens to the trees when they die, and the buried remains of all the dogs in the yard? What would it feel like to have lived a life in one place? For the first few years of the pandemic, we were so socially isolated that River and I developed a new relationship with the sun and its swinging yearly path, aware of how far apart the point of setting on and in between each solstice, which reminds me of standing in my grandmother's field at sunset and her clacking rocks together and throwing them into the air, so it was almost like we were dancing with the bats. Their rapid wheelings. I am disconnected from the sun now, and from my grandmother, and from the place I was born. And the problem with poetry is that it's always trying to sink me back into my nostalgia. But I'm ready to accept what is actually here. I'm not sure how to write about it, though. Trying to write in this house that used to be my parents and now isn't. Sitting at the table that used to belong to them together and now doesn't. Things refuse to stay themselves as they empty. Last night, I dreamed about the doors of this house and how I couldn't get any of them to lock. The wood too swollen, the holes old and blown out, the metal rusted? If I insert the correct dream here, does it make the poem better? I mean, does it make me more empty in that way I'm always wanting, each word or phrase a letting out, like light through a window? Where in this moment are all the people I used to love and all the selves I used to be? Does it matter, this knowledge I don't have, if I'm happy? I do my best to stay close to those I love, and it probably isn't a problem that there's too many of them to manage. But maybe the problem isn't the number of people, but the number of violences we subjected each other to. That distance comes first, and it fractures out, shards of memory. If nothing in life was monstrous, would I feel the need to write about it as much? Maybe if someone had taught me that writing could be that way, an exploration of joy, which is some part of the same object as grief. Disembodied hands, a dead bird's falling feathers. The film here is silent. What is sound like in a dream? In the mornings, I remember the dialogue. I remember if there was music. But when I relive it, it all sounds like the usual internal monologues, even if there's nothing usual about them, and they are often different voices. So many parts of a self, like tree branches. Some break off and disappear or are scavenged away for bedding, fire, misplaced artworks. I've been obsessed with this old folk rock song recently, and my papa is the only person I really wish I could share it with. This part of grieving is hard. The desire to share new to me experiences, the feeling that I'm neglecting the relationship even when I speak to the dead or think about them or write about them late at night when I'd rather be sleeping. Sometimes I think the insomnia is genetic. For as long as I can remember, sleeping has been hard, and for as long as I've known my father, he's been incapable of it, except sometimes during the day when he was supposed to be feeding me or picking me up from school or monitoring which of his graphically misogynistic novels I was pulling off the shelf to pass the time. Even after years of therapy and sobriety, I still have this belief that if I could find the center of the circular labyrinth inside, I could break it and undo the cycle, that I could write one poem and go to bed at a reasonable hour, eliminating the incessant chatter, the building up of the future, that I could know just from the date the exact spot across the sound where the sun would slip beneath that line and everything for a moment would be yellowish pink, the birds in the sky and the building's edges, the same pink in New Mexico, in New York, across the Front Range, falling on the faces of my many friends from each sectioned off part of my life. Maybe there is no center, no unburied seed or wall to mend. The self is just an ocean, and everything is movement contained or otherwise. The problem with biography is that it moves in a line, but personhood and memory swirl and spiral in and out of themselves, and the words almost seem to eclipse the point, the sharpened edge inside where everything dances, organs, rain, that one summer's purple lightning, which only this far removed can I write as something joyous that happened then, and not as something which I grieve to remember. I lament the past as gone when it was good, and rage at its evil lingerings. Yet what it all means is that I've been in love many times, and I am again, and in the future I will be more. Everything holds its dust differently. Rachel's tongue was slender and pointed, and I love to watch it touch me in those storms, even if I seldom revisit it now, except when the sleep won't come. Those moments are never lost, even when we let them go, refuse the nervous system's knee-jerk response to relive and relive ad nauseum. I'm starting to understand in my bones what S meant when she said my poetry was bloated, memory logged, sinking under the frenetic desire to understand and order it all. A list of everything horrible that was done to each of my grandparents and parents, and in turn, a somewhat excused list of every terrible thing they did, and now that it's said, I could sleep. Except I can't sleep because I can't put the pen down, because something still doesn't fit. All this stuff inside me, all the me inside others, or why should my writing have to suffer now that I'm suffering less?
Thank you, Cypress. I feel like I have a thing I want to say, which is you had a line about like somebody thought your poetry was bloated, and I was listening to you say that and feeling like the opposite feeling or something. Like everything in the world was, to me, it felt like you put everything in the world into that piece, and I will take away from it inspiration to be introspective and to sit with like the world inside of me. So thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. The next writer that we are going to hear from is Troy Landrum Jr. You can, if you're a person who's inspired by the like, woo, you can also bring that into the room, or you can, you bring yourself. I'm going to introduce you to Troy. Troy Landrum Jr. is a native of Indianapolis and has lived in Seattle for 10 years. His passion for reading and writing bloomed as he navigated a path of self-rediscovery through identity, faith, culture, and his family's migration stories from the Jim Crow South to the Midwest. These intersections are at the helm of his human experience and literature. These intersections are at the helm of his human experience and literature process as a Black artist and oral historian. Troy graduated with a master's in fine arts at the University of Washington at Bothell and is an educator, freelance journalist for the South Seattle Emerald, and a novelist and a wits writer. His novel In Progress explores the question of home through the historical American time period of the Great Migration, a period in American history where millions of African American people moved from the South to northern and Midwestern cities. He dedicates his work to the brilliance of African American history and the brilliance of his family history through the work of literature and preservation. And Troy has provided an answer to our question, which I will remind you. The question is, you are suddenly a crow. What are the first three things that you collect for your sparkly hoard? And Troy would collect ripe apples from his front yard, branches for his nest, which would be on top of the biggest tree, and also the wizard who turned him into a crow in the first place. For practical purposes, to start his adventure on how to become human again. Please welcome Troy.
I really love that question. I'm so tall. This is so difficult. All right, so I'm going to read the first couple passages of my novel. It's in the first draft period, going into the second draft. So yeah, this is something that I've been working and rewriting for about a year now. So bear with me. Yeah. Noreen cleared her throat as she surveyed the room. As her words began to form, her voice trembled as she tried to project it to the small crowd of Negro faces. They looked at her as if she was the intro to the main act. From the looks of it, they were just waiting for a distinguished gentleman to speak. Today, there would be no gentleman. By now, Noreen, aged 21, was used to the skepticism held by potential Negro voters waiting for answers. Their hope of shaping democracy for the country they had given their lives to lay in the hands of organizers, NAACP chapters, and Walker agents like Noreen. She had been at this work of organizing Negro voters in the South for 2 years now and had risen to be an overseer of the Walker agents, who sold Madam C.J. Walker hair products by morning and organized by night. It was a system that allowed the madams, the secret agents behind the Walker agents, to go unrecognized by county sheriff departments and white mobs. The madams were in charge of the strategic planning of the voter registration. Through the selling of their door-to-door product, they also sent out invitations for organizing meetings, recruitment of Negro women, especially college-age Negro women. Voters could register from their homes instead of going to the local registration buildings to get harassed, mistreated, or made to feel unintelligent through the voters' tests that happened to only be given to Negroes, never passed by Negroes, and impossible to answer by the whites who put the test together. The madams made it easier and worked together with other organizations to plan different strategies on how they would safely have Negroes vote. Elections didn't always go the voters' way, but the hand in democracy made them feel more human, more hopeful, and gave them the ability to live into their citizenship that they had always had. Although Noreen and the madams had their share of close white mob encounters, the job had provided more than she could ever ask for. It provided her with purpose, a purpose that not only gave support for her and her family, but countless Negro women. The small crowd of Negroes had snuggled themselves in the living room, shoulder to shoulder, with not a lot of room to even stretch. This was how most of the meetings that the madams had conducted functioned. The clock on the left wall struck 10 as Noreen breathed deeply into her rib cage. The room grew smaller as Noreen honed in on the eyes. She counted slowly to 3 underneath her breath. The walls were a swampy green, and the only furniture in the room was 2 couches and about a dozen chairs. The kitchen and the living room opened up into one another, squeezing as many people as it could into the room. There was a hallway on the left side of the kitchen that held about 3 rooms, 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms. The swampy color ran from the dark hallway to the last door that led into the garage. This layout served as an entry and exit point for all who would attend the meeting. The curtains throughout the house were all closed shut. Not a shimmer of the moon's light made its way inside for the safety of the meeting. As Noreen's words finally spilled out of her mouth, looking to explain the true intentions of the madams, the phone rang. Her eyes shifted towards the direction of the phone. This never happened. This wasn't supposed to happen. It rang again as the room grew quiet. The black spiral corded phone hung in the swampy green hallway and had the ability to reach any of the rooms, lending some privacy if needed. Noreen began to place her focus back on the group. The intensity in everyone's eyes shifted to a sudden startle. The phone went silent after a couple of rings. Noreen locked eyes with her fellow agents to try to understand what was going on. It was about a group of 6 madam agents, including Noreen. The agent who was her second in command had answered the phone and hurriedly walked towards Noreen. "It's your mom," whispered Noreen's second in command. The group stayed quiet. It was a quiet that hovered over the room like a thick, poisonous fog. "Do your best to keep them here," Noreen said to her second in command, referring to the restlessness of the crowd. "Hello, Mama? What's going on?" Noreen said, alarmed. Why was her mother calling her right now? And why was she calling her there? Baby, is that you?" "Yeah, it's me, Mama. Is everything all right?" On the other line was a pin drop of silence. Noreen could hear her mom slowly breathing, and Noreen's chest became heavier and heavier. Noreen could hear the tears welling up from her mom as she attempted to speak. "He's gone. They murdered him. Baby, they murdered him. They murdered him and burned the place down." "Oh my God, who, Mama? Who did they murder?" "That poor boy, Claudia's cousin. They left him outside like he was an animal. They laid him in a field for 3 days. 3 days. 3 days." The poor boy Noreen's mom was referring to was Earl, and the place that burned down was a juke joint that Earl's father was looking to invest in. Earl was the cousin of Noreen's best friend, Claudia. Family ran deep in the Negro Kentuckian community. Families like Noreen's and Claudia's were not blood related, but were families that chose one another. The moment Noreen and Claudia met one another in boarding school was the moment their families took a keen interest in one another. Earl was 2 years younger than Noreen, a life just beginning, a young man with so much promise, a musician, an entrepreneur. Although cousins, he was like the brother Claudia never had. Noreen repeatedly screamed, "No," to her mom until her voice started to crack. She began to think about Claudia and thought of her suffering. Noreen wept, and the excruciating pain began to shake her body to its core. Claudia was not just a best friend to Noreen, she was like a sister to her. They were inseparable ever since the day they met at the Institute, a Negro boarding school in Simpsonville, Kentucky. From 8th grade until graduation, they pledged to journey their lives' adventures together, wherever that took them. For most people in the South, most Negro people in the South, that was crossing that border into the unknown of the North. That was their dream, to join those millions of souls straight into the promised land. "I need to be there," she started to repeat to herself. Noreen grew silent. Flashes of Earl's smile swam through Noreen's mind. Her head slumped down into her hand while the phone slid halfway down her ear, her shoulder barely balancing it. She collapsed to the floor down to her knees. Her wailing began to match her mom's. It was loud enough for the two agents closest to the door to hear. They quickly opened the bedroom door. They swarmed to her side and collapsed on the floor with her, holding and rubbing her back. "Wherever you are, you gotta come back home. You gotta come back home to Kentucky," said Noreen's mom. They both stood on the phone silent for some time. The agents had put a box of tissue in front of Noreen. Noreen began to gather herself. Noreen asked her mom about Claudia and how she was holding up. Claudia had not been out of Earl's room for a couple of days, and her mom continued to urge her to get to Kentucky right away. Noreen's mom had mentioned that she knew that they hadn't seen each other in a couple of years, but Noreen avoided that part of their conversation by respectfully talking over her. "Mama, I'll be there," she said. They concluded their conversation like they always had, with an "I love you" that moved the both of them through the heartbreaks that came with the outside world. Noreen collapsed deeper on the floor. The agents stayed around her, began to fan her and rub her back. Without her agents asking, she told them what she knew. They murdered my best friend's cousin. That's it.
I can't respond to that right now, but thank you, Troy, for sharing the beginning of an enormous story with us. I think that you got 2 gems tonight, and that these are the readers that we have to share with you tonight, because it sounds like our 3rd reader is not here. I'm sorry to not have more brilliance and beauty to offer you, but thank you so much to Cypress and to Troy for sharing their work, and for you all for filling the room and for receiving it. My suggestion for you is to take this extra time back to connect with somebody in this room, perhaps somebody who read, perhaps somebody who didn't, perhaps the person sitting next to you who you haven't said hi to. Let's be together in this space, and thank you both for your words. Thanks for coming out.
Nothing Having chosen so defined, and if death should smell my breathing as it passed beneath my window, let it lead me trembling, trembling. I own every bell